Hello, I'm Super Orange Cat, and last night, Toonami aired the season 2 finale of One Punch Man. And at the time, I watched it as it aired, and I kind of wanted to do a video immediately afterward. But again, it was like 12:30 in the morning, and by the time I had everything done, it would probably be like 1:30, and I didn't want to have to do that much work that late at night because I was kind of sleepy. So I decided just to rest and kind of just stew on it a bit, think about it, and really kind of more better form my opinions about the season, about the finale in particular. And I'm just going to go into it as we go along. Season 2 has been very polarizing in general. Like, you have a lot of people who say it's just as good as season 1, if not even better, keeps up the momentum of season 1. And then you have a lot of people who are pretty down about this season, especially noting the animation and the kind of out of control plot. Now, I just want to and early on in the season, I was definitely on the early side of that. I was definitely thinking that this was a great season. The first 3, 4 episodes in particular, I really liked, especially going up to the start of the Marshall tournament arc, where I definitely like the whole concept of the Saitama just kind of using this as a get rich quick scheme, him not really caring about it, and also just the concept of King being this person who's just in like the right place at the right time, where everyone thinks he's a hero, even though he hasn't done anything. Just by sheer circumstance, he happens to be at the right place to be seen as the person who did it, which led him to be all the way up to I think the 7th overall rank of the heroes. Impressive considering the absolute high level of talent that the S class heroes do have, which is something the show elaborated on further this season, which is something I really like. And that's one of the strongest dynamics of the show in both seasons is how they do this interplay between this like class system between heroes. About the S class is this like super tier class, untouchable, and they're almost universally like worshipped. And then like the other classes, there's like diminishing returns. Like for example, you have Sneck, who I think was an underrated hero in the show. Where in the first season they kind of mentioned like, yeah, he's a Class A hero, but he's like the lowest ranked Class A hero, and he's more of a paper pusher than anyone practical. Like, there's no fan clubs for someone like him. And compare that to someone who's like, say, the first overall in the A class, who's become this like mega superstar womanizer and has become super popular, which led to people in the A class hating him because even though he's qualified enough to go to S class, he wants to stay A class because he gets to be the top of something, which led to a lot of resentment. And although they had a lot of good concepts thrown in, especially with the plotline with Fubuki, which is Tatsumaki or quote unquote Cabbage Lolly's sister. Like they really play up her character as someone who wants to go higher, but because of these type of people who just clud up at the very top, she knows she can't go further unless she uses more people and grows her force by getting people on her side, which was a great idea the show plays with, but kind of abandoned quickly, especially after they mentioned that all this was some type of latent jealousy she had to the success of her younger sister, which I thought had an amazing plot line for the show built on it. But other than just like one part where you have Tatsumaki show up and basically chastise her older sister for getting in the way and just disappearing, there was no interplay with that. And ultimately, I was just disappointed with how that plot line was dropped, especially considering all the many plot lines that opens up with these smaller heroes. That was probably the most promising one. Like, for example, some of the other plot lines we had in the season was Moomin Rider kind of contemplating like, yeah, I'm the top C class hero, but what compared to someone like Saitama, who one punched the sewer Swamp King guy in the first season, am I really that much of a hero? And that's a plot line that a lot of people forgot about because they handle it for like a few episodes early in the season, then they just kind of drop. Although there was something of kind of a resolution, which he's helping people in the hospital get out when the monsters were releasing their onslaught on the city. So there was that, but at the same time, they never really fully concluded. Like, yeah, he still feels like he's a strong hero, just in his own different way. And also, like I said, you had King, who had an interesting plot line, although it was easy to forget at times because you would have this thing where he'd be playing video games with Saitama, and he and Saitama have this conversation, and King will have this inner dialogue about, like, yeah, I'm good at these video games, but, like, I'm not a real hero. I'm a fraud, you know, and have him kind of have this resolution at the end where he stood his ground and was able to distract the centipede so that he wouldn't destroy the town, which I guess is probably as good as a resolution you're gonna get to a plot this season. Then they had Garo, the quote unquote human hunter or hero hunter, have this like interesting plot line early on where like yeah, he was like hunting down these heroes to fight and attack them. But then he had this like one kid who he like started liking, and it got to this weird interplay of like him putting himself in the shoes of this kid. And in the last, and they throw all this in a lot of this in the last episode, this whole like flashback to when he was a kid and him being bullied and being forced to play the monster to the point where he kind of became that monster he was forced to play, which I thought was an interesting idea, especially with the use of having all the other kids be like shadow figures to kind of show more of his mindset that like kind of like this is kind of a trope in shows now, especially in more modern or current show or movie adaptations, where like even the villain is the hero in their own story, and that's what I think they're trying to play on with Garo. But at the same time, they didn't have enough time to really flesh this out fully, outside of him pointing out like, "Hey, there's a kid in there. Don't shoot your guns in this direction." To show like he's a monster hunter, but at the same time, he was born human and he still has some aspects of being human in him. And then it ends with him being taken away by some giant eagle bird monster thing who's telling him, "Oh, by the way, we want you underground our facility. We're really interested in you," basically. Which, especially when when this same bird guy says like, "Oh yeah, that centipede guy, like 3 people can beat him, but like, oh you have no power relative to like some of the really high up monsters here," which kind of raises the question why they want Garo in the first place. Because I thought the whole point like they have see potential in him, but if they don't see much potential in him, then I don't I don't get their strategy. Although I'm assuming that's something that started addressing in the third season when they make it. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but I think it's a sure guarantee season 3 of One Punch Man will happen. And when the dub is ready, that will certainly air on Toonami. But again, I do have like some of the stuff I really do like about the season. When the show is making a joke, it usually lands. Especially with the season ending with the centipede monster who appeared in like a few episodes early in the season and was invincible. It appeared in the last episode, and you have Gino, Silverfang, and the other karate guy, can't remember his name, fighting it and it making no real progress on it. And then you have Saitama just show up and punch and it literally vaporizes, which I thought was again kind of funny, showing like again really bringing out the difference between someone like Saitama's power and anyone else's. I do like they do give a little bit in the end here of character progression of Saitama, in which you have multiple people who are not Genos seeing him punch it. So now people really recognize that, yeah, Saitama's that strong. And it'll be interesting to see when season 3 kicks off about what they address about Saitama's strength. Considering I think going into the season, he was like the 5th ranked Class B hero, which really isn't that lucrative. He was still behind Fubuki, the older sister of Tatsumaki, and she complained about being very low ranked and not having much support. Again, that's interesting to see the whole class dynamics again. I think it's the strongest suit of the show. But again, I think the show just tried too much to cover too many characters in too short a time. A lot of the characters blend in. You have like some of these characters who had these arcs, but I completely forget about because they drop it for a couple episodes to cover other arcs, and then when they come back, I completely forgot this character existed in the first place, thus kind of minimizing the impact of that arc. Although I definitely understand the argument of let's cover other heroes because Saitama is intentionally made to be uninteresting in terms of character progression, but at the same time, they bit off more than they could chew. If they covered on like 2 or 3 minor heroes instead of like 10 or 15 or how many they really tried giving plot lines to this season, I think it could have really worked out. But again, I felt like this show had a lot of potential this season and just could not execute. Although overall, I'd still give the season a 7 out of 10. There was a lot of good moments in it. And again, I was really interested. I stuck through and watched all 12 episodes and had interest in all 12 episodes. And with how some anime are these days, that's not really the easiest thing, with all this anime coming out of Japan, to really keep my attention for the whole season run is something pretty impressive. And I really ultimately, I might rewatch this season, especially when season 3 inevitably gets announced and when it gets its air date, and I get my interest peaked up about One Punch Man, I think this is something I will revisit. Although I think this was overall a step down from season 1, which I would see as more of like a 9 out of 10 season. But again, what do you guys think? How do you feel about season 2 of One Punch Man? What's your opinions on the show? Are you excited for its replacement, Sword Art Online, War of the Underworld, which debuts next Saturday night? Leave your opinions below. I love reading them. If you like content like this, if you want me just reviewing more anime content like this, please like this video. Please subscribe and hit that notification button. I'm Super Orange Cat, and that is all.